Over the last few years, a lot of people, including digital nomads and retirees, have started moving to Paraguay, which is a small landlocked country in the middle of South America that has a population of just under 7 million people. Now, if you've never heard of Paraguay, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. Although recently it has really started becoming popular, especially with digital nomads and with people that have crypto money. And there's a few really good reasons for that, including the tax advantages of living in Paraguay, the cost of living, and the lifestyle/community. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at exactly why people are moving to Paraguay to set up residency. We're going to see some of the pros and cons, the best and worst things about living in Paraguay, and we'll discuss exactly the steps to get residency in Paraguay. So by the end of this video, if you're actually interested in pursuing this, then you'll know exactly what to do. And we're doing all of this with the help of Paul Kitson, who is the co-founder and operator of Plan B Paraguay, which is a company that specializes in helping foreigners come down to Paraguay and set up residency so that they can take advantage of all of the benefits that we're going to discuss. So sit back, enjoy the video, and find out whether or not Paraguay would be a good fit for you and your needs. What are some of the benefits? Why would somebody want to move down to Paraguay, set up residency? Maybe give us the top 3 reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the main thing that I'm getting these days is it's really sort of, you could think about it as maybe political, economic reasons. So a lot of people in various Western countries, which is where our clients come from, are very upset with the direction that their current countries are going in. Usually more government restrictions, less freedom, more control. And they just didn't really like the way things are going. People can be very politically divided, and they're looking for countries that are perhaps not quite like that. The second one I would say is obviously financial or economic reasons. So what's nice about Paraguay, it's what's known as a territorial tax country. So effectively what this means is that any income that is obtained outside of Paraguay is not taxed in Paraguay. So this is a great benefit for a specific set of people, particularly crypto people, whether they're traders, they're investors, maybe they're yield farmers, they won't pay any tax in Paraguay, and also people that have online businesses. So any sort of digital nomad or remote worker or anything like that, they can really benefit from the tax system in Paraguay. When you pair the very low to no taxes with then also a much cheaper price of living, people can really get ahead financially a lot quicker in a country like Paraguay versus where they are back home. The third one would be just culturally and also dating wise. Generally, guys find it's a lot better dating environment if they're single versus what they're used to back home. And then again, culturally, to me, Paraguay feels like going back to the 90s in a way. Like people aren't so much concerned about like all these like political things or just sort of frustrated with their situation or what's going on. People more sort of live in the moment and just enjoy life and not tend to worry about too much about the future too much. I think that's kind of just nice and peaceful to be around that sort of vibe.
Let's talk a little bit more then about the quality of life and the lifestyle, because I've noticed on your Twitter and your Instagram, like there's definitely a focus on the lifestyle in Paraguay. So, you know, from things like the weather, the food, or learning to dance Spanish, Latin dances. Honestly, it looks pretty great. So can you tell me a little bit more about what is that lifestyle like?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like when your purchasing power triples, right? Effectively, you can live a much nicer, more lavish lifestyle than you could in your home country. So any sort of good and service that is sort of produced in Paraguay, you know, whether it's like restaurant meals, dance lessons, you know, rent, anything like that is going to be much cheaper and you can get at a much higher value. So for example, especially like we emphasize steaks a lot, yeah? Partly because steaks is one of Paraguay's main exports and they're just so cheap and high quality here. You know, like it's very reasonable to be able to eat out, have a high quality steak meal, you know, every night of the week. You're probably looking at spending between 10 and 20 US dollars for some of the highest end restaurants in Paraguay for that meal. So it's very achievable for people. Besides the lifestyle, Paraguay is a very interesting country, right? Um, because it's zero taxes, that also means that it's zero taxes for public infrastructure as well. So you get this interesting contrast where you can have these beautiful private areas like shopping malls and restaurants and everything like that, completely first world. But then, the roads aren't going to be as great. Some public areas are going to be a little bit scruffy. So there is that aspect as well. But yeah, just the lifestyle in terms of because the taxes are so low, things are so cheap, there's a lot more chance to sort of do your work, do your business online, whatever you do, and then also enjoy life. A second part of that, I would say, would be the weather. It's just consistently warm here. I can't do Fahrenheit off the top of my head, but it's most days of the year are going to be over 30 degrees here, right? We would just finish winter and it was 30 degrees Celsius most days or higher. So it's just sort of a consistently warm, comfortable environment.
What would you say are the best and the worst things about living in Paraguay? Or maybe more specifically, the capital, Asuncion?
That's a good question. The best and the worst things. Okay. I guess let's say do like three of each. Okay, so specifically Asuncion.
Sure. Because that's where most people with money would probably go to live, right? Unless you wanted to, be off grid and run a farm.
Yeah, I recommend start in Asuncion, and then if you want to go further out, go further out. Um, the best thing I would say would be the people. So Paraguayan culture is very interesting. It's very much influenced by the native people here called the Guarani people. And so just their whole culture, it's very kind of like a calm, like chill, friendly culture. So even if you're just like walking down the street and just a stranger passes you, like they'll say hello, or people are just generally very friendly and warm to foreigners here, which doesn't happen in all parts of South America. So I would say that. Obviously, if you've seen our Twitter, we're very keen on the culinary culture here. So you can just have just amazing steaks. So I'd say that. And then I would say the third thing, Paraguay is kind of interesting, right? Because it's kind of off the beaten track. And it's a little bit difficult to work in the local economy here. Yeah. The average wage is about 9,000 US dollars a year. So you're not coming here to get a job as an English teacher. Therefore, everyone that comes here is an entrepreneur in some way, yeah. And so your whole social group as an expat is only other entrepreneurs or people working on businesses or in crypto or, I don't know, poker players. Like we've had so many different types. So just the people I think you're just hanging around with naturally, I think is a really big benefit in Asuncion. In terms of the drawbacks, what would they be? Again, I mentioned in some parts the city can seem rough. So I wouldn't recommend maybe trying to drive your Ferrari down these roads here. They might get scratched up a little bit. So the infrastructure. What else can I say? Sometimes government and like services can be slower. The level of efficiency is not what we're used to in the West. Now, this can give us an advantage as people from the West sort of having businesses here because the competition's lower, but you'll be expecting to wait a little bit longer for things to happen here, which can be frustrating at times. And what would be the third thing? Again, the weather's very good, but then also sometimes it can be a little bit too hot over summer. So, you can get a week of 40-degree weather. It's fine if you're in aircon like I am, but you probably won't be walking out in the middle of the day. You'll sort of wait to the end of the night in regards to that.
What would you say is an average monthly budget for a normal lifestyle and then maybe a more luxurious lifestyle, sort of the best of everything that Paraguay has to offer?
By normal, I'm going to say normal by Western standards, right? Because there's plenty of happy Paraguayans. They will consider normal, but it maybe not be what we're used to living on. So I'll say normal for a Westerner. I like people to be earning at least 18,000 a year. I think you come here, spend 18,000 a year, you can have a pretty good, comfortable life, right? Then obviously, 24,000, 30,000, 40,000 a year, you'll be living a very, very nice top 0.1% life here on that sort of income.
Wow, okay. So you really don't need that much.
No, I mean, like I said, so last time I Googled it, the median wage here is 9,000 US dollars a year. So that's what the society's built around people living on. So if you're on 18,000, you're already earning double what a normal person is earning in this country.
Once you're there, can you talk a little bit more about the specific tax advantages? I'm a little bit curious. So say, for example, you came from Australia. What would be the difference in the amount of tax as a percentage that you would pay?
I mean, so in Australia, right, the highest income tax is around 45%. Then we have a sales tax, which is 10%, which you put on that. And then lots of things like, say, alcohol or fuel or various things have their own sort of built-in tax. So if you earn any sort of money in Australia, it's very easy to pay more than 60% of your income in tax. Now in Paraguay, they do have a 10% sales tax, yeah? But besides that, if any money that's earned overseas and also not brought into Paraguayan banks, it's important to mention, you pay zero tax on, right? So let's say you're a crypto trader, crypto investor, or I know you mentioned dividends, I believe, on your program as well. So you have all your dividends, you pay zero tax on those in Paraguay. So it's really simple as that. Besides money earned in the local economy, yeah, 10% sales tax you won't be able to avoid. And also it's up to a 10% on income earned in Paraguay, but there's very few people that will qualify for that.
And what about the business tax right there? Say you came down, you opened up a restaurant or some niche lifestyle business. What would those tax rates be like?
Well, again, they would be if it's a business from Paraguay, the highest rate would be 10% on that. I
Okay.
should say that I'm not a Paraguayan accountant. I always refer my clients to a good accountant we know, but that's my understanding. Generally, what our clients do is they'll have something like a US LLC. So they'll have their business operating in the US. You'll have all the benefit of the US banking system, US payment networks. And then obviously that business will, receive the income and then they can transfer it to their personal bank accounts without paying tax in Paraguay.
And do you have to be living for a certain number of days in the year in Paraguay to qualify for these tax advantages?
Right. So if you were to Google it, officially it says the tax residency in Paraguay is 120 days a year. Yeah. Now, in my understanding, I haven't heard of the government, cracking down on people if they stay less than that. If you want to be conservative, which is my recommendation, spend your 120 days in Paraguay, maintain your Paraguayan tax residency, and then with the other 8 months of the year, you can go where you want.
I want to pivot now and ask a little bit about the geopolitical situation, because in doing my research, and I actually spent like 2 hours this morning just like reading about the history of Paraguay. It's been fraught with coups and attempted coups and war and dictatorships and authoritarianism and all kinds of stuff. And it's only really in the last, let's say, like 20, maybe 25 years that things have mellowed out and it's turned into more of a stable, kind of safe country where you would want to live. So what is your take on the future of the geopolitical situation in Paraguay? Does it seem like it's headed in the right direction? Are property rights something that are enshrined and codified and that people don't have to worry about? How's that looking?
Yeah, and so it's a good question. So I definitely think Paraguay is going to remain, strong property rights, conservative economic policies, conservative social policies for the near term. I'm definitely not an expert, but I think there's a couple of reasons for this. And one of the big reasons is partly what I noticed is, so right at the south of Paraguay is Argentina, right? And Argentina is almost like the basket case of kind of like failed money printing, left-wing intervention, government control, right? And so I think Paraguayans see sort of all the difficulties and issues that the Argentinians face, and they're like, we want to go the opposite of that. We don't want anything like that happening here. I think how Paraguay works is there's kind of like a very strong, I guess you could say, elite that controls the country, right? Now, these people, obviously, they want to maintain their own wealth. They want to maintain stability. They want to maintain their own property rights. So they kind of set those rules to make things stable economically for them. And then also people like us who come to the country, we benefit from those rules, right? What I'm noticing right now is, like I said, issues in Argentina, as well as also Brazil, where those countries are going more to the left, and potentially in the future, they're going to have a lot more problems economically. A lot of wealth is fleeing those countries and coming to Paraguay, specifically Brazil and Argentina. You see this really in just the amount of construction and high rises and all that are coming up just to absorb all this wealth and people that are fleeing. So personally, I have no problem in property rights when you're here. What I do recommend to clients, though, is if you are going to buy a property, you want to get like a trusted lawyer or someone to look over the contract just to make sure it's legit. I have heard of horror stories in the past where people buy like the deed or the title to something and it's just completely made up and they've just sort of wasted their money. So you do have to be a little bit more careful in regards to that. But yeah, I mean, I personally see Paraguay becoming a little bit more like a Panama of the South in the future. If they sort of maintain that fiscal responsibility, it's a safe place to invest and, store money and wealth. I can only see the country growing stronger in the future.
Can we talk a little bit about Paraguay as compared to some other places that digital nomads might be considering? So let's say Panama, or for maybe the wealthier clientele, the Cayman Islands or something like that. Like, why Paraguay compared to those other places?
Okay, so let's talk about the two places that I think are probably most similar to Paraguay or attract the same types of people, right? And they would be El Salvador and Panama. Yeah, so first let's talk about El Salvador. So I've had some people who are leaving El Salvador, they're not happy there, and they're coming to Paraguay. And so the reason I believe that is because in El Salvador, this particularly crypto people, there's a part of El Salvador where a lot of the crypto people hang out, which honestly kind of sucks, right? Because what it does is everyone moves to that space and then it pumps the prices, and then you're paying first world prices in a third world country, right? So it kind of, in a way, like defeats the purpose of living in a developing country because there's no cost of living benefit there. So for that reason, I also think, Bukele is doing a very good job, my understanding, but it's maybe not moving as fast as what it could be, and the security there isn't as well as it could be. Paraguay, in terms of security, has been rated usually the third safest country in South America. So usually only Chile and Uruguay, which are very developed countries, are more safer than Paraguay, whereas we're quite safe relatively to a place like El Salvador. Now let's talk about my understanding of Panama. Again, I'm not an expert and I'm obviously biased, but I think firstly, when Panama changed their residency requirements, they scared off a lot of new people moving to Panama, right? So originally I was going to move to Panama before they made it a lot harder when they got rid of the friendly nations visa. This, I think, stopped fresh people flowing in. I think there was a bit of a real estate bubble there that could no longer be sustained, and that's kind of popping. And then also, again, you have, there seems to be a lot of unrest in Panama at the moment. It seems to be, some political issues which make it a less nice place to live in. This is what I've heard. Again, you might have a different opinion. And then finally, again, I hear that Panama is very expensive, partly because they're using the US dollars. And so it's like, if you're going to move to South America, you want to move to a place where you can get your value for money. You don't want to be paying the same prices you're paying back in the States or Europe, for example.
What does the process of establishing residency in Paraguay actually looks like? What are the steps? How complicated is it? Do you need a significant amount of money? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think one of the benefits of Paraguay is that, for a long time it was kind of forgotten, people didn't know about it. So to attract people, they kind of made the entry requirements quite low. So effectively, to get residency, first let's talk about the documents. Yeah, you're going to need your birth certificate and you're going to need a clean criminal record check. Now, both of these documents will have to get either legalized or apostilled, depending on your country. It's basically a stamp that your government or the Paraguayan embassy will put on those documents so that Paraguay can accept them. So it's really those are the only two documents you need. Besides that, you also need to have a passport that can easily get a visa in Paraguay. So most Western passports are fine. And then once you have those things, effectively you'll use a service like ours. We'll confirm your documents are all good before you arrive. You'll fly to Asuncion. We need you in the capital here for about a week to submit all your documents. Then after that, you have to wait. On average, we're finding it's about 2 or 3 months before everything's ready, and then effectively you're good to go. So like I said, very simple. Birth certificate, criminal record check. Previously, as of last year, you needed to put down a 5,000 US dollar equivalent cash deposit, but they've removed that requirement. What they have done recently, which is a little bit more difficult, is when you get residency in Paraguay now, first you'll get what's called a temporary residency. That will last for 2 years. Then once those 2 years has passed, you can then convert it into permanent residencies, which you extend every 10 years after that.
Okay, and so that's it. They're basically accepting anyone. You don't have to invest, say, $500,000 in real estate or start a business. You just have to show up, prove that you're not a criminal, and that you have a valid passport.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow,
so like
okay.
I said, very simple.
Can you tell us that a little bit about what your agency does to help people?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what we are, a residency service. So when I went through the process, like I said, I'm glad I moved here, but there was a lot of frustration and perhaps things I didn't understand. And it took me a lot of time to sort of wrap my head around how everything works here. So I guess part of our service is, besides the residency, we also sort of take out a lot of the guesswork and we sort of provide advice up front in terms of what someone needs to do at all steps of the process. First, starting with the documents. Every country has their own way of getting their documents. Some are more convoluted than others, so we help with that. The other thing we do is that when people arrive in Asuncion, I'll pick them up at the airport, set them up with a SIM card. We take them out for dinner and introduce them to our network if they'd like to. We play the sport called paddle every week. They're more than welcome to join us. And we just sort of, anything they need to enjoy their experience in Asuncion, we sort of help them, places to go, that sort of thing. Then after that week, if they decide that they then want to, some people just take Paraguay as a plan B, like they say, they go back to their home country, they keep it as a backup. Some people decide to actually start living here as soon as possible. With those people, we help them with stuff like bank accounts, real estate, insurance, driver's license, like firearm ownership if they need it, just sort of any service or thing that they want to sort of, get their life set up in Paraguay. The thing about Paraguay is that it coming from a Western English-speaking country, it can be very difficult at first just trying to figure it out on your own, not just for the language reasons. So to have someone say, yeah, this is how you do X, go here, talk to this person, it just speeds things up and makes your life a lot easier as you transition here.
So there you have it, the pros and the cons of moving down to Paraguay and setting up residency. Now, if you've made it this far in the video and you're interested in reaching out to Plan B Paraguay to actually talk about setting up residency and taking advantage of all the different benefits that come with living there, then there's going to be a link in the description of this video that you can click on and set up a meeting with them. Good luck, hopefully you found this entertaining or informative, and have yourself a great day.